commonly seen playing within cantinas, but just as common in laboratories. The Bith are a race of large-brained sentients, originating from a world of the same name, or formerly known as Clactor 7. Being one of the oldest races in the entire galaxy, the Bith weren't contacted by the Republic until the relatively late year of 5500 BBY, and only later joined a senatorial body over 4,000 years later. Over the following years, the Bith began to find the Republic invasive to their sense of privacy, preferring to be relatively isolated from its constant politicking. Due to this, the Bith history is largely unknown, as they have shunned themselves away from the prying eyes of outsiders as much as they possibly could, whilst also keeping one foot in the door of the Senate. Being in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, this was a relatively easy feat for the Bith nation, and it is from their swamp planet that the grand majority of the Bith remained, even until the latest known events of the galaxy. However, the Bith race suffered one catastrophic event that radically changed the world forever, one which would be known across all of the Republic. Around 300 years before the Battle of Yavin, a Bith city known as Nozo was developing an advanced hyperdrive that was said to potentially revolutionize space travel across the entire known galaxy. During this time, all the settlements upon Bith largely functioned as independent entities, so the success of one city was the success of that city alone. The capital Bith, known as Wagar, caught wind of this potential breakthrough, and wanting the credit for themselves, provoked a dispute over the patent. Through a series of manipulation and blackmailing, Nozo was awarded the rights to the patent by the independent judge the cities agreed to using. But soon discovering the scandal, Wagar began production of the hyperdrives regardless, and a fierce competition was born between markets. Eventually, the city of Nozo launched a chemical attack upon the rivals, wreaking havoc upon its population and killing thousands. In response, Wagar unleashed its own biological weapon, this one much more potent and in much larger quantities. As such, Nozo was completely decimated, and over 90% of its total population was killed. The remaining 10% became grotesquely disfigured, their DNA warped by the volatile chemicals, twisting their features upon themselves in unthinkable ways, and wreaking havoc within their brain chemistry. From this hellish transformation, a subspecies was born, as the mutations eventually manifested themselves in ways consistent among all those who were afflicted. These beings hold themselves within the ruins of their city of Nozo, hiding from the violent persecution of their former kin. Intensely hated, they were branded the Bith, a word which means Ghost Bith in Galactic Basic. However, these events had absolutely catastrophic consequences for the planet as a whole. Due to this swampy atmosphere, the biological weapons did not off-gas as intended, and instead embedded themselves within the ecosystem of the entire planet. Almost instantly, the life upon the world was killed horrifically, or mutated in dangerous ways. Locking themselves within massive domed cities, they desperately rationed what little they had in order to survive. It was now that they were totally dependent on the assistance of 4 planets. Being so far away in the Outer Rim, these necessities were rarely provided. Now having fully realized the folly of their actions, and the irreversible damage the planet suffered, the Bith race as a whole vowed itself to a strict code of pacifism, already having paid the ultimate price for their warmongering. Hundreds of years later, just a few decades before the Clone Wars, Bith became a relevant planet to the galaxy once again. Although still largely confined to their domed civilizations, the Bith persevered through their hardships and became a massive contributor to the fields of science and art. However, the Republic began to take note that the Bith were seemingly distancing themselves from the government, almost always being absent during its proceedings. During 22 BBY, just a few months before the dawn of the Clone Wars, the Bith had announced their secession from the Republic, and just 2 years later, announced their loyalty to the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Perhaps having been misled by the Separatist leaders, or acting out in resentment for the Republic's casual neglect of the Outer Rim, the Bith provided their new allies with advancements in technology, and claimed the Republic was a corrupt institution. When the New Republic resurfaced from the ashes of the Galactic Empire, and the Yuzhong Vong splintered Coruscant decades later, the Bith played a massive role in its rebuilding, and having paid for its transgressions in the eyes of the Republic, they were readmitted to a senatorial position, and relations finally normalized. Although the world of Bith was irreversibly damaged, its inhabitants had persevered to make vital contributions to the greater galaxy, and stand out as an example of the harm the actions of few can unleash upon an entire civilization. The most obvious feature of the Bith species is their large hairless cranium, which contains an extremely complex brain and is capable of processing thoughts with extreme speed and efficiency. As such, mathematics and music are extremely stimulating to their species, and they are capable of noticing the tiniest of complexities within these fields that would just simply be overlooked by most other races. They are also extremely dexterous, capable of using fine tools with extreme precision. However, because they process stimuli so much more radically than most other species, sonic weapons are almost a death sentence to their race, and it's not unusual for a Bith's head to literally explode when subjected to these armaments. Their large black eyes can detect details at the microscopic level, and underneath the skin flaps on their face is an advanced olfactory system, serving the same function as a nose upon a human. Possessing only one functional lung, the Bith are extremely sensitive to respiratory problems, as a punctured or otherwise inhibited lung would mean certain death for them, if not immediately treated. In addition, they exhale through their pinkish beige skin, which also means that any skin ailments could potentially yield adverse effects for the breathing. While Bith live about the same lifespan as the average human, they get much more use out of their years. Their brain has adapted to only require 4 hours of meditation in order to fully rest them. And even despite this dormancy, they are still almost fully aware of their surroundings. However, the Bith race do not reproduce like any other organisms do. Over time, their reproductive organs degenerate, as well as their desire to partake in such activities. Of course, still desiring to further their own race, a male and female Bith would bring genetic material to an organization called the Computer Mating Service. Here, a trained team of geneticists and a sophisticated program would analyze all the genomes for the couple, and they would begin to combine the material and begin the rest of the process artificially. In a year's time, a Bith would be born within the lab itself. However, the shunned Yibith race differs from their standard precursors. Their mouth formed into a protruding structure, and their skin burned a polluted-looking orange. Their eyes and skin became extremely sensitive and weakened, while their bone structure was reinforced to be thicker. More importantly, their brain chemistry was greatly altered, making them much more susceptible to actions of violent impulse. And it was these sorts of tendencies that the standard Bith used to justify their harsh treatment of their mutated counterparts. There are 3 subspecies of Bith. The first is what I refer to as the typical Bith, or just Bith. The second is the Yibith, which I have talked a bit about already. Thirdly, and by far the most obscure, is the Aligar. All of these subspecies have very different ways of life. The standard Bith is the one obviously most encountered. Due to the fact that they are very logically inclined, many Bith enter the fields of science, usually taking up positions as geneticists, doctors, engineers, physicists, and chemists. However, they also have made great strides into the realm of art and music, and have a massive appreciation for such crafts. Because they find the fields of art and science so stimulating, they often are considered to be something of leisure for their race, and many Bith design new technologies as hobbies alone. In addition, nearly their entire way of life is run by advanced computer programs. Many decisions made by the government are dictated by number crunching alone, and it is likely that the Bith participate in a planned economy. Geneticists are also regulated by best possible genomes and complementing traits. Darth Tenebrous was actually the mastermind of Darth Plagueis' entire conception, as he had actually manipulated Su'Aman into mating, knowing that they would yield a very powerful Force sensitive, one which would be a worthy apprentice. This is actually not an unusual occurrence at all within Bith society. While obviously not seeking to create Force sensitives, the Bith often participate in a form of eugenics, which seeks to create individuals genetically predisposed for genius-level intelligence or physical excellence. However, over the many years the Bith had been in contact with the Republic, many have left to live their lives amidst other planets, and like their homeworld, they usually work as some sort of scientist or musician, as most Bith simply cannot walk away from the thrill that these things give them, no matter in what sort of environment they find themselves in. The Yibith live a life of reluctant solitude, seeking to finally earn their Bith counterparts' respect, and be invited back into the fold of their lifestyle. Unfortunately, they are supposedly forced to battle their volatile brain chemistry. Whether this is based in truth, or simply propaganda placed by their unsullied equivalents, is yet to be discovered. Regardless, they are still subjected to extreme cruelty, and are fighting tooth and claw for acceptance in the eyes of their precursors, and the galaxy at large. Lastly, and most mysteriously, is the Alligar. The Alligar are known to live within faraway islands upon the planet of Bith, far away from any hint of civilization. All that is known about them is their reclusiveness, and their strange knot-tying traditions. At some point in their time, the Sith Lady Lumaya learned this ancient craft, encoding cryptic messages upon these strings in the hopes of luring Jason Solo to the dark side. While it is not stated in any source within the lore, it's likely that Alligar use knot-tying to record stories, honor past ancestors, and distinguish themselves amidst their peers, as many other races participate in similar rituals for these purposes. In conclusion, the Bith have persevered and climbed out of the catastrophe they had set themselves in. Through their vast experience as an elderly race, they have dedicated themselves to a life of pacifism and appreciation of both arts and sciences. Like with any race, there are those who are rare exceptions, who can break through these archetypes and distinguish themselves in unique fashions. Regardless, it is their fierce calculation that the Bith race is most known for, and it's this aspect of their society that has proven to be the most beneficial to the universe at large. Some notable Bith include the Jedi Knight Ulaha Kor, the entire Jizz band, the Model Nodes, and the midichlorian manipulating Darth Tenebrous.